I'd like to introduce Jade Smith. He's our MSD director, and he's going to talk about Canton Township composting. This is Hasina Abdu, everyone.
Welcome. Thank you, Supervisor. Yeah, we're here tonight. This has been a long time coming, but we're going to have a discussion about Canton Township's possibility for holding its own compost site or not holding its compost site, kind of do a brief overview of an update on our recycling program, and then also touch base on the future of composting, just some other options. I have with me John Selmy, as you all know, the DPW manager, and this is Mike Logan. He's with Michigan Consulting and Environmental. He's kind of an expert in the industry, known Mike for a long time, and he's going to go through a big portion of tonight's meeting, but I'll get us kind of kicked off. As I said, we're going to go through and do an update on our recycling, the compost center analysis. We'll talk a little bit about the funding projections with us not going to Ypsilanti as we used to, and then food composting options as well. So just a quick update on the recycling update and education plan. We received, I think as everybody knows, another $28,000 in an App to Action grant through Eagle. This is the second part of we did the inspection grant last year, found some interesting findings throughout the community. And one of the biggest things that we found is that the sticker that's actually on the recycling bin, there's a lot of people that use that and it's outdated. And a lot of that recycling material changes periodically depending on what the market is like. So with this award, we're actually going to be getting new stickers for all of the bins. And then, but how we're going to roll this out is we're going to send out a flyer, which you can see on the bottom right-hand corner. It's going to have a QR code. So this QR code, they'll be able to scan that. It'll take them to the website. It'll actually have that updated form of what can be recycled at that time. So we can change that as the commodities change. We will be sending this postcard out with the QR code, but those stickers will not go out till July. That is because we're switching to a .gov as opposed to .org. So we want to make sure that we have the right website and the right linkage behind it. So as soon as that, if .gov gets delayed, then the stickers will get delayed. We want to make sure that we've got that really smooth transition. We did preview this recycling grant in January and in the April focus that went out to all the residents as well. And then we're actually going to take this QR code and we're going to do magnets. So anytime we have any sort of public events, whether it's Liberty Fest, we have our master plan meetings coming up, we'll have them here at the admin building as well, and also for the welcome kits. So we'll have more of these stickers to hand out.
Jade,
Yes?
how are they going to get placed? The people are going to walk around and do it, or the recycle truck?
Nope, we are going to direct mail them to everybody's home.
The stickers?
Yes.
Oh,
Yep.
so they do it themselves?
They do it themselves.
Oh, okay.
So we're going to send them, they're going to get a magnet and a sticker. So they'll be able to have something on the refrigerator and then also something on their cart itself.
Okay.
Yep. We are continuing to educate the community on recycling. Here's just some activities that has us going through the rest of the year. We've done some direct mailings already. Focus articles on the July stickers. The stickers will come out in July. And then May through November, we'll continue doing various blasts through the Focus, social media, press releases, and on the website. Something that we just tried over the course of the last, well, I guess 2 Saturdays, one in the month of April, one in the month of May, we actually received, you can see in the bottom right-hand corner, some finished product that was compost, yard waste compost from GFL. John organized that with GFL, and we went and picked it up, brought it back to the DPW yard, and opened that up to all the residents of the community. The first one was on April 30th. We had about 75 participants, and we actually ran out of product. The 14th, which was last weekend, we actually got more product, but we had less participants, so we have some left over. But it was still a very, I think the participation was better than what we anticipated it, and it kind of gave us a good feel for maybe some of the things we could do moving forward. We've talked about, we're not sure we'll do it again this year. That part of the season, we're getting into June now. Don't know if there's really a need for it. We still have some at the yard. But maybe for next year, we put together a bigger plan that moves it around the community. So it's not always on the south end at the DPW yard. We could do it up on Ridge Road Park, at a school or something like that, and partner that way. But overall, I would say it was pretty successful. People were, I mean, you can see the pictures. Those are real pictures from this past weekend. People were just, I think the one in the top left, if you can actually see it, that woman just has something in the back of her car, just covering the back, and they're just throwing dirt in there. And it's not a truck. So,
Was
yeah.
Oh, was it?
Was that you?
The van, no, the closed van on the last one. But I know people came with pickup trucks twice,
Oh.
because I shared with a bunch of people. But I think the fall some people at fall, you put the compost for the winter, and you cover it for no weeding and all. So fall, people might be still interested if you still have it.
Yeah, and this is the finished product. Yeah, we can talk about that too. And then I thought I'd take the opportunity just to throw out our 2021 totals from our household hazardous waste days. I won't go through every line item, but this does show you statistics that Canton Township disposed of household hazardous waste of 141,000 pounds last year of various types. So thought that was just some good data to have and to share with everybody.
That's good, thanks.
So that's a real brief overview on the recycling and some of the things that we're doing internally right now. Obviously, we're still kind of growing what we can offer the community, getting kind of thinking outside the box, getting a little innovative with how we can work with GFL, and then continue to educate the public. I'm going to turn it over to Mike now. This will be the bulk of the conversation, which is we analyzed a compost center at the DPW yard earlier, well, back in 2021, and I'll let him take it from here.
Ready? Yeah. Thanks, Jade. Both Jade and John tasked me with taking a look at the property in behind the DPW yard on Sheldon. That's a photo of it right there. So the initial thought, just assess the market conditions, assess the site itself, and then provide a report of the findings. And that's what I need to share. And then feel free to ask any questions as we go along. Currently, and like the year previous, it was a little less expensive. You were going right down Michigan Avenue to Ypsilanti Township previously. And what was the cause of it, John, of them kind of restricting your volume? They couldn't take all that you had anymore, correct?
Right. I think we were paying between like 180 and 200.
Yep.
20 maybe tops.
Yep, and then by going to GFL, just a more expensive location to take the material to. The state is really restrictive on volume, what you can keep on a property, just so. It's not been a great industry from the standpoint of standardization. There's been a lot of folks who just bring material to a yard, fill it up, and just leave, vacate.
You mean in Ypsilanti?
Not in Ypsilanti, no, they're run properly, do everything right, but they have a small footprint. And what ends up happening is, like, just like yourselves, if you have too much volume to come in there, they can't guarantee that you're gonna have enough space to process your material. And they count what you have incoming and the stuff you haven't shipped off yet. So you're only allowed so much volume based on your footprint of property. And they have estimates like on how many acres and how many tons or yards you bring in. So they're very tight in regard to your permit, what you're allowed to do and not do on the property.
Okay, I'm sorry. Kate, did you have a question on this, or?
I actually think it probably has to do with the previous slide on the compost pickup,
Oh, sorry.
which, sorry, I was a little bit late joining, and so I'm not sure if this was addressed or not, but I'm wondering about, first of all, I think it was great that there was free compost pickup. I actually went on Sunday, or Saturday, sorry. My husband and I picked up compost. But I'm wondering about the community gardens. Is it possible, or is it available for our free compost to be put into the community gardens?
I think anything is possible right now, just because this was a little bit new, a new endeavor for us with GFL. So I think what we can do is we can locate maybe who's running the community gardens and see if there's a need for it, and then, get with them and see what the possibility is, but sure. I mean, it would have been open to them for these last 2 Saturdays as well.
Right. I don't know if all of the compost is gone. I know we were a little bit later in the day on Saturday towards the end of the pickup time. And there was still some left, but I think it would be great if, and I think it's Leisure Services that offers the community garden rentals.
Yeah.
If that compost could be available for those gardens.
Yes, we still have some at the yard, so I can get with Director Holmberger and work on that.
Okay, thank you.
All right, sorry, thanks. So, I'm sorry, so you were just saying, so we were paying $180,000 at Ypsilanti. Eagle came in and they said that their footprint was too small and we were adding too much to their compost, so.
And it's probably like not necessarily an Eagle, probably Ypsilanti Township wants to stay in compliance, so they're gonna like dictate, okay, this is what we have right now. They took a look at the incoming yardage or tonnage coming in, and then they hit the pick and choose who they're gonna take. They'd love to have a neighboring community, I'm sure. It's just their footprint doesn't allow them to do that.
We met with Ypsilanti Township in February to, they expanded a little bit further to handle larger quantities. We provided our numbers. It was still a lot for them. But the one thing I did present to them was that, like last year where GFL was struggling to pick up compost, right? We went to Saturday only. That, would they be able to handle that Saturday only? And I think that, I know that kind of, pushed them back a little bit. They weren't prepared to do that on a Saturday because they only have 2 people that operate that center. But I wanted to be transparent that, if something happens and we have to go back to that, right, Saturday only pickup because labor shortage, whatever it is, that they knew that. So I think that was part of it. And then our compost numbers, so they're going to work on some more space again this year. And then, I told them we'd circle back in the winter time again to see if, there was some interest there. And maybe this labor market, levels out a little bit so that, we don't have this issue of, hey, we got to do it on Saturdays because we don't have enough employees, enough trucks, right? So
I think, when talking with Ypsilanti Township too, correct if I'm wrong, but we may have been able to get away with it for this upcoming season, but then they'd have been right back at their max with the state, and then we would have been kicked out again last year. So that's very inconsistent for our relationship with GFL and for us budgeting and looking at the reality of what we could actually do.
Okay, thank you.
How long have you been doing it with Ipsy?
How long were we doing it? 5 years before that.
And before, what was?
I'm assuming it went with our hauler, wherever they took it before.
Yeah.
This is GFL doing with at Ipsy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Kind of reeled off that you're currently sending the material to Arbor Hills, that's owned by GFL now. And then other locations that we kind of surveyed to get kind of a market condition, the City of Taylor, Waste Management, Environmental Wood Solutions, Tut Hill Farms, and Country Oaks Landscaping. We kind of went through a bunch of different scenarios, and this is assessing the property, and then also assessing a market condition. Would it be possible that you just set up a transfer operation on a property that you own, that property and behind the DPW yard? So that was an option too. That's probably your lowest cost opportunity, and based on your current volume, it would cost the city about $530,000 to keep that equipment on site. None of your own labor, none of your own equipment, but just to rent the equipment and have somebody able to take material in. It becomes a little more complicated if you're bringing in other municipalities. You end up having to have some more infrastructure. You got gatehouse, some ticketing procedure. Becomes a lot more complex on how you orchestrate that. And we'll go into some details on the site specific on the next slide. The estimated cost for Canton to process your own material would be about $747,000 annually, and a capital outlay of $1.7 million. Just left a conference last week with the Michigan Recycling Coalition, and they talked about small sites and municipal sites that have failed financially over the years, and a lot of it's due to processing, not having an end market for the commodity. You take a look on a couple slides previous to stuff that you guys offered to your residents. That was great finished product. That's what you end up having to do. What, like the city of Taylor had an issue with a long time ago, is a product that they couldn't move. They couldn't give it away. These folks are all making quite a bit of money on that material that they have. They all get certified by an organization. You look, there's no weeds in any of that material. So by the high heat during the composting operations, it gets rid of any bacteria or any growth inside there. So any weeds that would happen organically on your own property, not from that site itself. It's pristine clean. And all these sites are the same thing, Tut Hill Farms. They all have a little different process. But that's what you really need is a high quality output. And not only getting money coming in on a gate rate or tipping fee, but a very marketable product, whether you bag it or you sell it out in bulk. And then I do have some specific issues. The city of Taylor a few years back kind of tasked me to take a look at their site. We don't need to go into details on this stuff, but their baseline costs, they were upside down about $650,000 annually. And these are different options we let out to get him or get them to some profitable venture. And really the only option, and municipalities have a difficulty with high labor cost, then some burden, I'll call it accounting features with this thing, kind of laden with where bucket do you put like the equipment in if it's shared. So they had some of these things. It was overburdened with some of that equipment cost. But these are all the different scenarios that we kind of came up with. How do we make it right? And take a look at that picture of the site. You see all that plastic? You see all the contaminants inside there? They really had difficulty moving any product because they didn't have the material to be able to screen everything properly. The material back then came in with a lot of plastic, and they still have quite a few acres of that product still on site there.
Just to go back one slide, we did do a rough estimate of some capital outlay that we would have to purchase if we did want to actually have our own site. And that's listed up here on the presentation. And it was going to be about $1.7 million just in capital outlay in site improvements and the type of equipment that you would need to go ahead and actually do it and do it properly. So you would have a good finished product like Mike was saying.
What size footprint would we need in Canton for our size
The
community?
minimum, they say to be successful, about 25 acres. And most sites are larger than that with at least the ability to like expand. The biggest thing is having some like feedstock, be able to sell the material and known like, okay, what do you have? They have nutritional value type things, what this can do for your like output, your throughput from the standpoint of yield and things like that for your, for whether it's soil. The concept for compost is soil enhancement, what you can do to improve your soil. But 25 acres is about the minimum. And then ideally like up to 100. And that's just for like traffic flow, getting in and out, and then having a different area with, like you talked, these are windrows. Don't necessarily have to run it that way, but that's been pretty successful and tried and true. The one on the positives, the site itself, you couldn't have a better location, proximity to 275, prevailing westerly wind blowing toward a landfill. So any potential odors would be really mitigated. You wouldn't really have an issue there. Not a whole bunch of issues with neighbors on the other side as well. So ideally, your location was fantastic. And well received from the local communities. I kind of reached out to a couple different haulers and then also municipalities. You wouldn't have a problem moving the material at all, getting anybody to come inside. So those are the positives. The negatives, the biggest negative was your wetland issue, and that's at the very bottom. And then small footprint, and then another more logistical issues, how do you get them through your lock yard? And I'm talking other communities besides your own hauler. GFL running to the back wouldn't be a problem. But if you start having other haulers coming in, other, like say, Joe Public wants to dump a pickup truckload of compost or brush, how do you handle all that truck traffic coming in? You'd really have to do something different. Let's just go to the wetland issue with the site. The majority of the site, about 90% of the 15 acres is either wetland soils or actually classified as wetland material. And this isn't anything we came up with or monitored. It's classification by the state and the feds. And then you can mitigate the property without any issue. But the first thing that Eagle wants to know is like, is there any treed vegetation on the property? And there is. And would you need access road? Yes, you would need an access road on the site. And then the other kicker, I don't know why they get involved in this, but they really do when you try to get a permit. Are there other more suitable locations for this project? Not in the city or in your township, but in other areas there are. And then you also have a drain issue on site with the drain that runs through the property. And then what's kind of unique too, even though it's kind of a natural product coming in, if you're bringing in any material, it doesn't matter, it's still got to be permitted, even though it's a natural product.
What are the implications of permitting? Just the cost of it, or?
You could definitely get it attempted. The one thing, those items would all be yes. Like you do have trees, you do have a road you
Yeah.
have to go through, so like those are the big hiccups. It's kind of tough to see in this map though, but right at the center is the property itself, and then the yard and back. The soils are the items in kind of the yellowish color. The green is actually deemed wetlands already, and that's kind of the main dumping area where you'd have to bring the trucks in and dump. So that's your biggest issue right there.
This is the DPW entry, way right here, the furthest to the south. So this is private property below us, and then this is the landfill over here. So you can see that most of our property is wetland.
So does Canton have 25 acres? We don't have 25 acres anywhere from what the maps I've seen, is that correct?
Not that I would know off the top of my head. And then I think we'd have to look at also some of those other factors. How close is it to the expressways? What's surrounding it? I mean, would businesses want this around it? I don't know. So I think we'd have to do some more research there if that was the direction that you guys wanted to go.
On all the sites, like it's an ideal location where you're at, just like the prevailing wind is the greatest part of the property. And then the other hiccups are really just kind of the narrow site. And then how you'd almost have to get another company there to help out how you don't lay it out on the processing. Would you want to do a bunch of windrows? You would need a lot bigger footprint for that. And here's some other items inside here. One of the biggest ones is you had about, I think it was 8,000, that's the number, 8,000 tons or close to 25,000 yards of material. And the little math that they kind of use is 5,000 an acre. So you run into trouble, you have about 5 acres right there just for your incoming product coming in. You still need to stockpile stuff for like the next season. You got to process, you got roads and everything else. Your footprint's really small for that part. And then kind of mention the other items, the access to the yard, the type of processing that you'd have to go, I'd say at least 25 acres on that for anything. And really long-term, you really got to think you really need the neighboring communities. You'd have to make it a viable enterprise financially to make a good go of it. And it's just for my part of this analysis it was just my opinion not to pursue this any further, like in a feasibility part. You get other engineering firms in and try to really cite it. It becomes really difficult. And just my recommendation is other places that would be better suited for it. So that was my opinion at the time.
So the next part is I was going to talk a little bit about the budget and how we sit with our sanitation budget. But are there any more questions on the site or the composting itself? Or do you want to wait till the end?
Oh, no, I'll ask. So does that mean that we're basically saying it's not something that we can move forward with in Canton, or it's something that just specifically this site can't move forward with?
I don't want to.
Say never, but yeah.
Yeah, well, I don't think it's that it can't be done. I don't think that, and I think with what Mike is saying too, it can't be done there. There's too many things that are fighting against us.
Yeah.
To put it in that particular site. If we really wanted to go on a hunt and try and find 25 plus acres to convert to a compost yard, I mean,
Yeah, like,
sort that out. And, I mean, we had a pretty interesting meeting yesterday looking at available property and didn't realize how much is actually being taken up. It just hasn't been approved, it hasn't been developed yet along Michigan Avenue. So there's we could do some more research on that part of it, but I don't know that there's any, I couldn't pinpoint 25 acres off the top of my head that would be in a good location without wetlands that would be suitable,
Yeah.
as we sit here tonight.
And I'm sorry, are you going to go any further about the future of composting for Canton Township, whether it's here or not, or are you moving on to something else?
We were going to go into food composting. So this was
Food,
kind of our
okay.
yard waste composting. That was kind of the analysis. That's what we had Mike come in and do, was the analysis of that particular spot, and really give an opinion on that, do the research. So the yard composting, we're kind of coming to a close on that.
So where do we stand with yard composting then, in terms of GFL and IPSI and all that?
Yep. So as of now, I don't see that we're in conversation with IPSI anymore. We met with them earlier this year, as John said. And as I mentioned, I think we probably could have gotten away with maybe 1 year worth of deliveries over there, but they did not wish to have us come back either. So until they get their ducks in a row and get their facility to be the capacity up to where they think they could handle us, I don't know that we would be going back to them anytime soon. So as of we sit today, GFL would continue to collect our yard waste and take it to their locations and process it as they are now.
Okay.
And we'll
Are-
continue to bring them in like we did these past weekends
Mm-hmm.
to allow our residents to get some of it.
Okay.
And so it kind of ties into the next slide, but just wanted, because I know there's a lot of questions out there too, that our costs went up when we went back to GFL. I've worked with finance and I've worked with their treasurer, and our trash hauling contract is going to go out to bid in 2024. So in 2025, we actually start a new contract. So all the pricing is going to change. So for the next 3 years, we do not see that there's going to be any change with us. We have enough fund balance to go ahead and support the way we're operating today and still maintain a 15% fund balance in the sanitation fund at the end of 2024, which at that point, we'll know during that year, and hopefully towards the beginning of 2024, what that is going to look like going into 2025 for our budget, and then we can actually do some more forecasting after that. So we'll have 2 more years to get specs drawn up, to get that bid out on the street, get those competitive prices back in. And then during that time, if something were to happen with IPSI, we can address it at that point. I don't think our communication's not cut off from them by any means, but there was just not a wish by their elected body to have us back, and I think they ran into some operational hurdles. And as John said, they only have 2 guys that run their entire site. I was out there I think a year and a half ago or 2 years ago, and visited the site, and it's tight. I mean, they showed me the section that was all Canton, and it was the majority of their facility.
If you want to touch on Northville Townships, recently went out to bid.
You want to share that?
Yeah, so Northville Township.
Can you move the
recently-
mic a little?
Oh, sure. Is this better?
Yeah.
There we go. So Northville Township recently went out to bid the last couple months, and GFL came back as the lowest bidder and reduced their contract significantly. So hopefully in 2 years, that's still in play. I think Plymouth Township went out to bid too also, and I think they've come back with a lower contract from the same hauler, so fingers crossed that that's still in play in a few years.
Now, ours will always be a little bit different just because of we don't pay tipping fees and we have the landfill, so ours will always look a little bit different until the landfill is full. But that was surprising news to us that we saw the reduction in their contracts. So
Yeah.
keep your fingers crossed.
Does Ypsilanti and the township both use this site, or is it just the city?
It's just the township.
Oh, just the township?
Yeah. Yeah.
Did you have a question, Hasina?
I think maybe I just don't know that, like GFL is doing our composting now. But before it was going to IPSI from,
They
not
would-
for GFL.
They would take it there
GFL would take it.
Yes.
Now where does GFL take?
to several yards.
Arbor Hills. It's
Oh,
a-
that's, okay.
It's a site that they own now. They didn't previously, but
Oh.
over the last years, they acquired the landfill and the compost site out in Salem Township.
Okay.
So right now, we allowed the residents to use the compost and we brought it to them. Are our residents allowed to go there and pick it up at different times?
That's something certainly we could work out with them. I mean, we had that conversation with GFL back in December, and he seemed open to it, so, I don't know, how many people want to drive to, I don't know, 6 Mile,
Never know. Do you have
It's
another
only a couple miles, but.
This young lady here will drive to Troy to drop off styrofoam to get refills.
I don't want to speak for John and all the DPW employees, but I can say like the way that we did this the last 2 weekends, it worked. And if we found that there was a bigger desire and a bigger need for it in the community, we could work on some sort of permanent process to where we could bring it back from GFL's location into Canton so that people wouldn't have to leave. I think we could easily, we have the equipment to move and to load dirt, so I think we could accomplish that.
And I wouldn't want to speak for GFL either. They may not want, a lot of people on their site either, right? For obvious reasons, like liabilities.
For safety.
So, yeah, safety liabilities, sure. At least if it's on our yard or our property, we can kind of control that too,
Thank you.
So I kind of already went over this, so I don't see any need to change. I won't be coming back before the board for a change in the sanitation fund in the next 2 years as we sit here today. I'm fairly confident in our fee that we're getting from GFL. And then, like I said, we'll be getting together, I'll probably actually rope Mike into this to help us put together the bid specs for our hauler. We may go out and try and get 2 haulers because of what happened last year. Giving us an opportunity to have 2 people on call that could be servicing the community. So in case there is an employee shortage again, we run into something, we've got some contracted backup as opposed to just trying to figure out what to do. Because I don't ever want to live through that again.
No,
So,
it was a hard year.
yeah. And I've talked with Director Trumbull as well about, the financing, and she feels very comfortable in this process as well.
Good.
So moving on to food composting options, this is one that's had a lot of buzz. There's lots of questions on it. So we've done some more research, and I'll turn it back over to Mike to go through what some of his research has found. I will say, from where I sit and the little research I've done, this is somewhat new. There's not a lot of communities that are doing this, but there are some options, and I'll let Mike take it from there.
It really matters where you live at too. Ann Arbor's probably the one that's got the most farthest along where they're kind of do it community-wide. There's still a big drop-off portion of it too. Talk to the folks who run that operation out there, and a lot of times they can't tell if it's different than garbage coming in, because people just naturally assume this is compostable and recycle it. They're probably the farthest along from the standpoint of mindset. It's in their mindset in Ann Arbor that you're going to recycle, you're going to divert from landfill. So their population base is different than probably everywhere else in Metro Detroit. So it's unique. They have a whole bunch of problems, and their program is when somebody does drop something off that's not compostable, there's no sorting. It goes in the trash. So all the good that they did in the sorting part previously, they drove it all the way out there. It didn't do any good if it's contaminated. So that's one of the big things beforehand, really have a thoughtful process before. The one I think is most successful right now, and it's a pilot program in the city of Ferndale, just started last year. So it's really all fresh. They kind of shot it out there. Who wants to volunteer for this? They had 400 participants that wanted to do it. They delivered almost 400 5-gallon buckets. I'll just interrupt myself when I see discuss pitfalls. She kind of wishes she didn't just have one size fits all, because a 5-gallon bucket's pretty convenient for drop off, not so convenient in the house. How do you handle all that? Doesn't fit under a sink well. So I got some examples of containers at the very end, but they think that there's one, hey, a 2-gallon container underneath, you can keep it there. As it fills up, you can bring it to the 5-gallon bucket or just bring the 2-gallon thing to the drop house sites that they have throughout the community. There's nobody that really recommended, even Ferndale is hesitant about going to like a curbside program, because how do you really handle it all year long? And the other part is like rodent issues. They like the program, how it's set up right now. And what they do is they have 5 locations throughout the community, typically in parks. They have a couple like businesses that are allow people to bring it in too. But at each one of these parks, they have like your toter carts that you have at the curb right now. They have 65-gallon carts between 2 and 5 at each location, depending on volume. And the folks just bring it in there. They've been very surprised. The person who picks it up, it's My Green, Michigan, picks it up. Been pleasantly surprised at the lack of contamination and lack of odors. And what they do is they line all these containers at the receptacle. So each one of these 65-gallon bins is lined. So the folks just go out there and pull the liner. And then you don't have any residual material inside there. So that's how the odor kind of gets eliminated. So real good thought process at that.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Did they start that and go through a summer season yet?
That's what, no, they have not. Yeah.
Okay.
They feel pretty confident.
Okay.
They really do. They've had some hot days and things like that. But the longest it sits, any of these containers, is a week. But I agree. Like what we just went through last week, I'm kind of curious how it was last week. And what's different too is like each one of these communities is a little different. Like for example, my next one downhill, Tut Hill, doesn't want meat and they don't want bones. But the City of Ferndale pilot program can accept that. So it really is kind of, if you have a friend or family in a different community, why can I do that? It's just the end user. What can I handle? What can I process at the end site?
So which company picks it up? So you're saying like they'll have it in their parks and the residents bring the bucket and they can dump it in, and then who picks
So
it
a
up?
company called My Green Michigan picks it up, and it's with a residential style truck, and it goes around. It's got a route. It can come to Canton as well. They said they have a couple businesses in Canton they pick up. He didn't want to give details which ones they were or anything like that, but he said there's folks out here that actually have a pickup. So my gut tells me they're like a, kind of grocery store, more like a restaurant.
Okay, and where do they take it?
They take it to a company called, it's owned by the same company, Spurt, out in Wixom. And they're out at the Wickston wastewater treatment plant, and they handle a whole bunch of green material. And, like your grass clippings, brush, that type of material, and then leaves as well.
So they only started it with 90 people. Are they going to open it up to all of Ferndale, or is it just going to be?
Eventually, yes. Right now, it's a pilot program, so they're still gathering statistics and all that. But after a year, then they'll come up with what the game plan is going forward. They have a zero waste manager in the city of Ferndale, and she's kind of run the whole program. A lot of time at the very beginning to get this thing kicked off. And then she was saying maybe an hour to 3 hours a week. She works on it now, more data gathering than anything else. But not a whole lot of complaints, a very enthusiastic audience. And it was really kind of, I was kind of surprised at a lot of different things on it. But I like the service part of it. You don't have a big vessel, just potentially just stinking up like an area. I like they did a liner, and it's all BPI. It's a plastic liner that'll break down. So they don't really have to worry about like that breaking down at the compost site too. So it's really, it does work. You just can't leave these bags sitting on the sun. It won't last. So it was really a great process. The folks I'm probably closer with is Tut Hill Farms. That's the site where I brought most of my compost material to. A while back, she handled a pilot program in Ann Arbor. She handled University of Michigan buildings. Google had a food waste program. They had milk run out there every day with, they did it in drums and handled the food waste and came back to that site every day, so very expensive. And then like limited, not all food waste. They're kind of specific on what they want. What they recommended is just pick an ideal drop-off site. They said a farmer's market is a great opportunity, like a weekend type activity. You have like a roll-off container ideally, and then it's dropped off on a Friday and picked up on a Monday, so you don't have any odors or rodent issues.
It's interesting that they started with, only 90 people versus, okay, everybody started doing it. I think that's clever.
They all said baby steps, and I kind of talked to Sandra at Tut Hill, why wouldn't you just do it all year long? She goes, it won't work. And she's gone through this before, tried to do it. Like, she does a lot of businesses, and that's successful because they have a motivated, like, force coming into the workplace every day. You're not having that person go out in the wintertime, maybe they don't want to drive out to go to a site on a snowy winter day type of thing to the DPW yard, or say you had a compost bin out and back here, becomes tough. But they recommended, like, try to partner with either a municipal site, a commercial business that's taking compost in now, that's willing to have like, public come to their property. All of them are kind of expensive, there's no doubt about it. We'll go into the cost structure on the next page. And then other examples, this Midtown Composting is one. I believe any resident could call up right now and just get the service. Almost like you could have like a clothing type recycling done. Same type of thing if you wanted.
Oh, so residents can call them and just create
Just get a
a,
bin,
contract.
get a contract on their own.
Anne Marie,
oh, Kate, yeah.
sorry, I have a question. About the City of Ferndale pilot, what happens to the finished compost? And I know it's probably not finished yet, but will residents be able to have the finished compost come back to them if they want to use it?
It wouldn't necessarily be just food compost. It would be, theirs is mixed in with the other material.
Okay.
But they definitely could have like material brought back in, but it just wouldn't be food compost product coming back. Theirs is mixed in. Sandra at Tudhill has a different process where she kind of does like isolate the material and then feathers it in later on. So same thing, you're not going to get that food composted material exactly, like back.
But it could be mixed in with like yard waste?
Yep, oh yeah, like both sites would definitely feather it in depending on what the end user wants on their compost mix. There's a science to what they make.
Okay. Is there a cost to residents that are participating in that program?
In Ferndale, no, not right now. It's piloted, it's subsidized. They got a grant for all that.
Okay, because yeah, the Midtown Composting has a fee associated with it that people have to pay monthly, I believe.
Yep. And actually afraid to like just have this for public consumption, but the cost like for Ferndale's, it matters on volume. So their cost averages about $700 a month, and they had to pay for all the containers. You don't necessarily have to pay for containers. I'm talking what each one of the residents have. They could use any 5-gallon bucket, or you could have something with your own promotional materials put on, have a sponsor. You could do a lot of different things there.
Oh, I'm sorry, Hasina, did you have a question?
Yeah, I didn't understand what you said when she asked what do they do with the compost. What did you say? That is, they don't, the final product is not.
It matters on the site, but all of the compost would feather it into like other, like leaves, grass clippings, brush material, depending on what they have on their property. They all have a proprietary mix of what they want, and they market different materials to whatever the end user wants. Like this mix you end up getting from Arbor Hills look really nice, but that might not be a product that landscapers want or a farmer wants. So they all make different products like anybody else makes a product.
So why can't the two cannot be mixed? The compost with the landscape compost that we have?
With the Ferndale process, yes, like that could be. So, for example, he has florists that he picks up.
Is what?
Florist.
Sorry, I can't hear what the man is.
Florists, like for
Florist, yeah.
flowers?
Okay,
Or like a nursery. That material like could be mixed in with this route as well. Where at Todd Hill, the unlimited recycling, no, she just wants food waste isolated. And I think it's more the contamination issue. She has one load coming, doesn't have to worry about where it came from, whatever else. If it's bad, it's bad. It's rejected.
But I guess what you're getting to is GFL we can't put it in with our yard waste
GFL,
right
like,
now.
no, they don't have any food waste or food composting option at all right now. And don't, at least at last glance, they have no vision of starting to accept it either.
So the way the composting is done for the GFL, the landscape products is different from the food composting? Like,
Ferndale, the same thing. They pick up compost at each one of the residents, but they can't put food compost in that mix.
they can't mix it?
They can't, no.
Okay. Or because they are doing maybe different, it's a different method maybe?
It's a pilot program, and they don't envision the two mirroring each other either anytime quickly. Right now, their material goes to Sacra, so they have a composting program as well, but not with food waste.
I wonder if there's different times it takes for the yard waste to come, to break down versus the
Because they're
food.
including meat and other stuff, maybe if they're not doing just like, just leaves and green, like vegetables and leaves and
Oh.
I think there are different methods, right? of
And it's
compost.
different nutritional value. Right now, like the green material, the grass, doesn't have much nutritional value. The leaves are what everybody wants. And then it doesn't cause odors. I mean, it's a lot nicer product to deal with. But these were some of the comments and feedbacks that they had. This is where you get into issues. Okay, somebody brings like food compost in a 5-gallon bucket. They'd love to have a spigot at the receptacle. Well, what do you folks do with that spigot? That sounds like a recipe for disaster. So no vision for Ferndale to put a spigot in any place, because really it's just going to lend to other issues.
You mean
That's
just
what a
to
resident would like,
rinse out
but,
your bucket and rinse off your hands and things, or?
well, just rinse out the bucket, but that doesn't help Canton Township out or Ferndale. Like, it may be another problem for you folks. I mean, you got to think, everybody who comes in there, what are they going to do with that residual material that's going to make a mess? So, I mean, there's a whole lot of like pitfalls, and you got to really follow up on it. So they kind of learned a lot of different things. Everybody loved to have more locations, to convenience factor. They have a very young demographic in the city, so they're very that's why everybody's pretty enthusiastic about it. Still relatively small numbers, 400 people. Just like your numbers, it seems that's way more people than I would have thought to go pick up compost, but it's still relatively small compared to your number of households. This is what's interesting. 36% of those 400 visit a site every week, like with half of those folks keeping the buckets inside. The other people came, the other 64%, they went every other week or monthly. These BPI liners, that's what's really kept everything pretty clean at each one of the sites. And this is a real big important thing, have a trash receptacle close by. So they have other trash items there, or you see those vessels that are there. You don't want pet, like litter inside there. You don't want like newspapers. You don't want anything else. You just want like your food compost in each one of those bins.
They haven't thought of liners for the smaller buckets?
They do have liners for the smaller buckets.
Oh, okay.
Yep. I mean, definitely for sale. I got some brochures and things like that too. Yeah, there's no problem getting any of those BPI liners for any size container you'd like. And then just go back real quick. Like you can see, okay, items not to put in. At this conference, just at the Michigan Recycling Coalition, they had a behavioral specialist there. He doesn't like something like this. I love this brochure that they had, okay, don't put this stuff in there. So you have a jar of peanut butter. They don't want the plastic with it. They just want the peanut butter in there type of thing. But they say, don't have anything negative. So just put the things you can put in there. Don't put anything, don't be negative with writing into communication. That's up to you folks to decide.
No, then you get hopeful recyclers
Yeah.
that throw
yeah,
TVs in.
Exactly,
and stuff,
exactly.
yeah. We've dealt with that.
Most of the items we do talk about already, you can kind of see the cost. It's basically like your cost for a roll-off container you'd have as a weekly pickup, or if you had something, a construction project over a weekend. So that's basically your cost, depending, the ranges and the size that you'd have. And then you can kind of see the food waste guide, similar like with the yes and no, but all these other items that they said. And these are all items, not all of them, but the first 3 are items you could actually put in the other container in Ferndale. But in this one, they don't want that material there. And again, it's just their compost process at the facility where it goes to.
So that 500 to 700, that's what the township would pay, or the city pays of Ferndale?
Yep.
Or whomever.
Yep. And these are the different container types. The one with the kind of lime green lid at the top, right underneath container types, that's a 2-gallon size. The one at the bottom left, that's your 5-gallon bucket with the screw on top. This is another 2-gallon size, but this one had the BPI bags right next to it. And this is a 13-gallon bin that some folks did like to just be able, something nice and neat you could put in your garage and just pull the bag out and bring it to a site. And the ranges, I mean, there's big ranges because of, it's all quantity. And you can get whatever logos, whatever you want on there too, and instructions.
And so the cities pay for the containers that you've been working
And
with?
it was through the grant that paid for all of it, yeah.
Oh, okay, grants.
So in either of these, people participating can come and get some after it's been processed? Or it's only sold to,
I think the only way to really
Commercial.
do it is how you folks just did it. Have the material brought back to like whatever property you think is best. I know Tut Hill and Spurt, both those locations are just not good for the public to go to.
they're not?
Oh, we do have a question. Stuart, oh, actually, I think I have to do this. Allowed to talk. Okay. Stuart, you want to go ahead?
Hello, sorry about that, I was on mute. Right. So I was just saying that, first of all, I just want to thank the Canton Township Board for taking the time to provide this study session with the public. I've been pretty vocal about wanting food compost in the township in the past, and I am just asking about the Ferndale program. So, as I believe one of the members of the board said that currently what is funding the pilot program is a grant. Would anyone know what sources of funding they have lined up, if any, to take over once the grant money is used?
They're gonna fund it. They went, the zero waste coordinator went to their city council and said, this is what I'm looking for. What the budget numbers are, I really don't know. But she wants to enhance the program for anybody who wants to sign up for it. So it's gonna be funded through, and I don't know if it's gonna be a joint, maybe the people that buy a container and will pay for the service part of it. But I think that's, like, there's definitely funding that the council's approved. I don't know what those numbers are, though.
All right, thanks. I'm just asking to get a better idea of what the Canton Township options would be.
No, we don't have any yet. It's just, he's just giving us basically what other communities are doing.
Yeah, my big suggestion would be, don't do anything broad-based. Pick either a small sample size or a small area. And what everybody has said, these kind of baby steps in regard to like, get the ground underneath your feet a little bit on what you do. That's a suggestion from everybody, even like the Ferndale folks, she goes very happy they started slow.
Okay.
Just a quick comment to jump on that. I think too, looking at whatever the wishes of the board were, then we could go back and actually do some true financials as to what this would look like long-term, 5 and 10 years out, with what kind of participation rates. And then obviously we would consult with someone like Ferndale who's already gone through it and bring them in and say, okay, as you just presented most of it, like what's the pros, what's the cons, how'd you get it kicked off, market it, and start that pilot program. But I would agree with Mike. I would think trying to take on, 30,000 households right now, and granted, you're not going to get 100% participation. I mean, this is going to be for some people, and it's not going to be for other people. So, asking for those volunteers and those pilot people is something where I would recommend starting.
And
as well.
that's what Claire kind of said in regard to the contamination potential. If you have peer pressure by putting your bins out, recycling bins, if you all of a sudden have that pressure about a little food composting bin, people are going to put it out and it's going to be contaminated. It's going to wreck all the good things that everybody else has done. And you don't want to get into, Jade, you're a bad person for not putting out food compost. John, you're great for doing it. You don't want to get involved in that stuff either. Nobody's a police. It's a great thing that they're offering this to the 400 people. But it's not for everybody, like Jade said.
Would DPW be a viable site for food processing? Since that's a much smaller scale, I don't know what it means in terms of odor and quality of working there, but just in terms of the site.
I actually think their yard's a little tough. It's locked. The process of going through the front door to like have anybody go through the gate and all that's a little cumbersome for a resident to come in. I don't know what an ideal location would be. It'd really almost be somebody's doing it right now, or something that's maybe just a weekend type. No, this kind of affects what Ferndale did because it's at all their parks. So if you had a park location that's somewhat monitored, it's kind of their thing was dusk to dawn, and then had a trash receptacle nearby. Maybe that's a better like avenue for it. And then the policing, Claire, who runs the Ferndale, she'd do it every week. She'd go around to take a look at all the containers every week. They have a lot smaller city than you folks do, than your township. I mean, it's a lot smaller.
Do you mean like put a big receptacle at DPW out front or something and only allow it Monday through Friday dusk to dawn, like you said?
Yeah, but you'd also have to monitor it, that people aren't just coming and dumping trash in there, but, yeah.
Are you talking about more of like the processing of
Yeah,
yard
and
waste,
the
or of
process.
food waste out there? I've only looked into the state regulations on the yard waste. I don't know what the regulations are, and I guess my first mind goes to food and wetlands and drainage, and I'm not sure that that probably is a good recipe, but I don't know how that would work.
I'd almost say, like, the only way to really do it is have it like a depository, you know, a receptacle, and then have it moved to somebody who really does it on a big scale. I mean, all these folks are mixing it with other compost, like the green and the brown material already. Yeah, I don't see just food waste and like anywhere on the property that would be viable. I don't know what you'd get out of it when
Well-
it breaks down.
What are they doing with, so in Ferndale, it's in the parks, but they're not processing it there?
No. It's going to Spurt out in Wickston.
Okay, all right.
And I'm not familiar with with Spurt, but Tut Hill, I met her, Sandy, is that her name?
Yep.
So we met her at a conference last year, and so although she takes food compost, there's other compost material too that she mixes with it to create that end product. So I think if we just had food, that's a whole different process too. So she does do both. She just doesn't take
Right.
the meat.
She just
but-
wants to control like what's comes in at whatever time. She wants to know what's coming in, take a look at it, and she feathers it into what, I can't tell the difference between any of the piles, but there's a difference between them all out there. And it's all for the end user, what the end user is going to eventually want.
And where is she getting her yard compost from to feather in?
It's really like depends on like her business, but she would get from like, she's out in Greenock Township, so like Hamburg Township, South Lyon, Brighton, Pinckney, might get some like Ann Arbor Township stuff coming that way too. But it's really more of a regional type thing, almost like a hub and spoke is how most of these sites are.
She have over 25 acres to do all this on?
Yeah, she's one that's near the 100.
Oh, okay.
She would definitely be open to tours too.
Yeah.
I couldn't make it. I know
Yeah.
you went out there.
Yeah.
But, yeah, she would definitely be open to walk you around. She calls it a farm. I mean,
Yeah, it's a
I
centennial farm.
imagined it to be a much smaller operation.
No.
Okay.
And really the success, like, there was a couple of presenters last week, Hammond Farms, they're up near Lansing. And then there was a couple other composters there too. But the big sites, Ann Arbor's got a big site. That's been a success. Now they have too much volume that they can't take anything else. So that's a little hiccup that they have out there too. So like there's no opportunity there. Now in the Grand Rapids, he just sent me an email today, wants me to get him material out there. It'd be a lot harder to do.
So any program that we did would just be collecting and bringing it somewhere else probably, because it's pretty much the same issues that we have in terms of the yard waste,
Yeah.
finding an appropriate spot. Okay, thanks.
Does Plymouth have something? Or, I don't know if, I heard Plymouth has a curbside pickup of food compost, but I can't find it. When I did Google it, it came up with Plymouth, Minnesota does.
There you go.
Plymouth, Michigan, I haven't seen. I don't know if you've heard.
I've heard a couple different things about that. Like the folks that I talked to, John and I are both on a public works board. Yeah, they're looking for suggestions. There's nothing formal that I'm aware of at any city beyond Ann Arbor at the curb, where like there's a weekly pickup at the curb.
Could it be that pay for?
Yeah, the pay for one,
Could be
yeah.
that Midtown
Yeah.
Composting.
Okay. Kate?
Thanks. Yeah, a couple of things. One is just when we're talking about the different programs like the City of Ferndale pilot and then the other various ones that we've discussed, when we're talking about having food compost mixed with other compost, that's not really an issue, is it? I mean, I compost at home, and I mix yard waste and food compost. My understanding is that you really want to have, the more green materials mixed with drier materials too, to get a good compost mix. So that's not really an issue, is it?
No,
To have the food?
not at all, not at all. And it's really like how these folks process, like Arbor Hills, spurt. They're big into windrows, where Tut Hill Farms kind of piles it up, and they do a lot of their turning, a lot of their activity in the wintertime. And it's to control odors, like they're really conscious about their neighbors, things like that. So everybody's got a different process how they do it.
Right, and if it gets hot enough, then, then that's good, even in the winter.
The big thing is, like, you're right, generating the heat. That's what kills all the bacteria on the inside. So when you see the steam coming off those things, off piles like that, it is generating heat, and that's what kills all the bacteria. That's where you get like the nice material that you had shipped out here with no weeds. There's no bacteria that's going to cause any of this stuff. That really kills everything off. Gets up to about 130 to 150 degrees.
Yep. So the one thing that I didn't hear discussed tonight that I would like to just learn a little more about is policies or ordinances that the township could use to help foster home composting. I know that, sometimes there's some impediments for residents. First of all, education, but also sometimes homeowners associations might have something in their in their deed restrictions or in their covenants or restrictions or their bylaws or whatever governs their homeowners association. Sometimes there's items in there that restrict home composting. So just something to think about as we continue our journey, to getting more of a formal program here in Canton.
Dina, you had a question also?
I think when somebody asked how would it be smelling in the summer, but when they put the cooked food leftovers, those are the things that attract rats and mice, right? If you do like the home one that Katie's saying, just browns and greens, like I do it at home, but I don't put any meat or anything like that. I just put browns and greens. That's it. That's why I thought you could mix it with the yard waste. But I think maybe how they do it, the heat one or the cold one. That's why maybe they couldn't mix it. So now I understand why you cannot do it together. But if you give incentive to residents to do it, and the subdivisions do not, have rules to stop, I think that would help people do it. A mix of the township providing the options and also some leeway for people to do it at home
Yeah.
if needed, right? Until we have a better approach.
That's a good point. I know when we're looking at some things, like some people are asking for chicken coops and things like that. When we do things like that, you'd have to have a permitting process and an inspection process on those also.
Yeah, I definitely wouldn't see us inspecting backyard compost containers, but I think what we could do is create a really thorough education process and some, like Trustee Brzezinski said, what our ordinance looks like and how we can promote it and maybe what we can do to aid in helping people understand how to properly do it. Because if it does get out of hand, then you have a blight issue, then you have a rodent issue. So we would want to make sure we cover all that up front. And John and I, we've had some preliminary conversations about that because this is clearly something that the board has a goal of becoming more sustainable, more green. So what can we do to support that?
If you do it, if you educate people, you can even have sites at the parks where people can, you just put the big, it just composts itself and just sits there. But as long as you don't put things that attract mice, right? You don't want other issues because of composting.
Yeah, I think the pilots, that sounds promising also. I'm learning from Ferndale and us even looking at a pilot. We have the farmer's market every Sunday, doing it there. Okay.
So I know this is just discussion because
Yeah.
it's not a true study session. So
Yeah.
at some point, if needs to be further discussion and clear direction, then we can circle back on that. At this point, I think we've got resources. We know it can be done. There's processes we can go through. So, but
But in the meantime, actually, Midtown will do composting. I mean, we.
Correct.
If we
a
can put
resident-
resources on the website that say, you know, if you want to do this, here's a company that you could call, and residents can still do it on their own. We could even talk and promote, you know, how to properly, like I said, properly do it at home. But I think we want to have some internal discussions, obviously, with public safety, with ordinance and things like that, to make sure that we're not setting ourselves up for, you know, issues and problems.
You see like the numbers there, 90 out of the 400 were doing it already at their house. So, and that's a big number.
25%.
So, almost 25% of the folks were already like composting at home in Ferndale. You probably have,
We probably have people doing it here.
For
I'm
sure.
sure we do.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, Kate and Hesina.
Is that something that would be like inspected by building?
No. I would say, because I don't know what we would really inspect. It's not like a,
you haven't turned it in 3 years, you
well,
know?
yeah, then you have an odor complaint. So
Yeah.
I don't know that we would have to inspect it.
Might be
Like
more-
the compost thing?
Yeah, I think it would be an ordinance issue more so than a building issue.
Especially if there wasn't some clear guidelines on how to do it, maintain it, you know, and then they let it go, and next thing you know, we got a problem
Yeah.
between odors, environments, right?
And I think Kate brought up a really good point, is homeowners associations. We can pass all the ordinance we want and promote it, but if the bylaws of the homeowners association doesn't allow it, our ordinance doesn't actually supersede that. Those,
Ah,
You can't have them change it, you know?
they have to do it on their own. I mean, they created those bylaws and those covenants for that particular association, and people bought into that knowing that if there is a restriction, I mean, even if we pass the chicken coop ordinance, there could be associations that say, no, we don't allow any sort of livestock in our association. And I bet you in Canton Township, there's probably quite a few that would restrict.
oh, yeah.
Oh, for sure.
I-
There's dog
I mean,
size
isn't-
restrictions, I'm sure.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yours doesn't allow anything.
No, but.
You can't even
I
go
didn't-
outside in
I
Stevens
didn't make
neighborhood.
it. I mean, isn't inspecting composting sounds to me like inspecting trash. I mean,
Yeah.
it's the same kind of issues. I mean, if it smells or if it's attracting rodents, it's going to be more of an ordinance
Yeah.
of those things than
For sure.
actually inspecting.
Well, I wasn't proposing it, but we do inspect a number of interesting things in the township that, you know, and so, you know, trash gets taken out to the curb one day a week, whereas a composting site would be there, it's a fix, right?
The site, you mean, oh. you
No,
mean-
you're really, like, you know, you have a compost
I
thing in your
thought-
backyard.
Oh.
That's food for rats. You know, we have rats in my neighborhood. We didn't used to have rats in my neyborhood.
I'll be interested to
all these
see
compost.
and follow up with Ferndale at the end of the summer to actually see how that goes for June and July and August. I'm sure it'll still be successful, but they'll have some
Yeah.
more hiccups. There'll be more on that list of things to probably consider,
Yeah.
for sure.
And it could be more frequent pickup, you go twice a week instead of once.
Right.
So there's ways to handle it.
Kate, did you have another question?
She had her hand raised, but she's on
Just-
mute. Oh,
Just more of a comment. When we're talking about home composting, if you do it right, it won't smell.
Yeah, it doesn't.
Oh, yeah.
And I, like Christina said, I don't put meat or bones or anything like that in my compost. But if you do it right, it won't smell. It gets that heat going and everything breaks down without smelling. When we're talking about programs like where the items like the food waste might sit for a week, you know, in a collection area, that's when you might have an issue with
oh, yeah.
odor, I think. But I can be corrected if I'm wrong, but I think it's that anaerobic decay that is the issue rather than when the compost pile is getting oxygen.
Nice. Science.
Too bad it's not a real meeting, otherwise I'd make a motion to have Kate and Hasina become the inspectors of compost in our township, so.
We can do that at the next meeting.
Unfortunately, can't do that. right now.
Right.
Are we done?
Well, I guess, yeah. Do you have any other questions or?
Are you done the whole thing?
Are you done with your?
Yeah, yeah, I just went back to that one, but yeah, we were.
It's not about compost, but recycling. You know how you have, so I just went to Detroit. So Detroit has a site and Ann Arbor has a site. So when styrofoam, I see people putting styrofoam. I live right here in the subdivision across the street. People put styrofoam in their garbage or in the recycling bin. There's one neighbor, she had like a bunch of it, and I saw it. I don't think the trash GFL took it because it was there for a whole week after garbage day. So I forgot, but I was going to tell him, I take it to Detroit or I take it to Ann Arbor. So so is there anything we can do? At least I know you guys educate them, but people are still putting it. They put styrofoam all the time in the recycling bin.
Oh, yeah.
So I don't know, is it a way that we can do it too, or?
It really matters on your
Styrofoam
end
drop-off?
site where your material goes to. Like here, GFL takes it, so they take it down to Huron Township, I would imagine, right? So there is no, like, they don't accept it down there. It's a hard.
They don't, yeah, but we can't collect to send it to wherever Detroit sends or Ann Arbor sends.
Unfortunately, our hauler where they take it, the facility they take it to doesn't accept it. So I don't think our current hauler, we don't have a provision for them to say, hey,
Right.
pick up the styrofoam, drive it to Ann Arbor, right? We don't have that.
I think when we go to write our new specs, if that's something that's a desire of the board and the community that we want to offer that and we want to require that, we can put that in our bid specs that you need to be taking, styrofoam separately to some sort of location, whether it's to theirs and it's separated, and then they're a transfer station and then they take it to Ann Arbor, Detroit.
Yeah.
We can explore that with our hauler in 24.
I remember.
Maybe in the short term, if you want to provide an address or something, we can provide them some information and try to better educate them that what can and can't go in that can.
The hard part is that a lot of foam will have the recycling symbol on it, but
Yeah, that's a good
I
question.
remember asking GFL when we did the site visit
QRC code.
down in Huron Township, what are the barriers you have to recycling styrofoam? And they said, well, there's a specific machine, because some sites can recycle it and some sites can't. And I said, okay, because I tend to be the kind of person who asks these kind of questions. I said, how much does that machine cost? And they said between $100,000 and $150,000. And I thought, oh, that's not a lot of money. I wonder if the township could buy that machine and let GFL use it, or we could ask that it be added into the contract when we opened it up. I will be curious if now given inflation, it's probably more than $150,000 now, and that was a long time ago, and the guy could have been spitballing when I talked to him. But it would be interesting to see if that's a provision we would add if it doesn't substantially increase the solid waste fee. It's probably hard to do all those things, right? Expand for styrofoam, expand for food composting, expand for composting in general, and keep that solid waste fee down. So there probably will need to be some strategic decision-making. But it's at least feasible to do styrofoam in Canton Township. Probably more challenging now I imagine they're having a hard time sorting this stuff because they're probably having the same issues everybody else is having when it comes to staffing. If you ever go to that facility, it's still even though they have machines, it's a very people-oriented process because people throw out styrofoam. And they have to pick that out of the belt. And they move quick, that stuff gets moving down there. It's a serious job. It's a serious job.
Yeah, I'll put Mike on the spot, but I think when we go to write our bid specs for the trash hauler, we can actually have them say, okay, your basic hauling like we always have, but then actually have on, option A, option B would be food composting and then styrofoam composting, just to get their pricing. And they may bid on it and say they're not going to offer it. Or they may give us a price and then we can work that into our, our rate structure and what that would look like for the whole township. So, like I said at the beginning of the presentation, anything is possible. It's just, it's all about money, and then, you know, we've got to go back and do some more research, so.
And difficulty with any plastic, styrofoam, film, whatever, it doesn't really matter. Like with the plastic bags, it's really lightweight. So you have like a lightweight material. So if you look at your overall volume coming out of the township, it's less than 1%, even though it might be more by volume, but by weight, it's less than 1%. Just say the number's 150,000. There's a bunch of engineering that's got to go in because it's heavily automated there. Even though there's a lot of people, it's still heavily automated. How do you get that styrofoam off? You saw at the very beginning, they try to like have all the bags go up at the very beginning, suck them all up. Everything is clogged up with the plastic grocery bags. So that's why they don't want them in there anymore.
Yeah.
Even styrofoam, they were taking it for some time. And then they stopped it because people were,
It didn't work. It didn't
Didn't
work
work,
like their site, it just failed, it just gummed up the whole process.
So I was wondering, could we, I know that we've seen the GFL say, maybe we can offer some residents to go on a tour also and see it. But, you know, I think that Mike had a good idea in terms of looking at, you know, putting it in the contract, like you said, seeing if they'll do styrofoam.
Oh, yeah, they have public outreach, and especially this site down here, because they have that large room that they, I mean, it's a classroom. They used to host tours back in the day. So we could actually, I mean, we could host those and have people sign up, and just, it'd have to be, you know, capacity. We could only have so many people go at a time, but, yeah, we could organize that with GFL for sure.
Yeah,
I think they like to show off that site because I think, and this is my own opinion, but I think the more they show it off, the more people understand how to actually properly recycle. And they see, oh, well, if I put that bag in there, it's okay. When you see it, what they have to do to get that bag out of the process, it's, I mean, Michael's right. They're cruising down
Yeah.
there,
They move
sorting all
quick.
that stuff out. And the foreign,
on the website, the video of how it's done and what happens.
I believe we do have a video of that. I don't know, I will get it out, because we did go down with our cable crew, and we did film it during the recycling education grant we did the first time. We have footage of how they do that
Yeah,
down
so
there.
it should be on our, like, Canton Township website, so when people go there and the big, no, items not accepted, so that, in the video, it's
Here's
already
why.
showing. Yeah, here's why. Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. I'll have to check that. I know, yeah, you're right. We did do a video to educate people.
Although, I will tell you, if you did a Venn diagram of people who are not very good recyclers and people who don't go to township websites, I bet there'd be a substantial overlap of both those groups of people, because there are some kind of key things there.
Can the truck itself have this, like, GFL truck, like a big sign of what's accepted and not?
No GFL, no styrofoam,
Great question.
So people.
and no bag, no plastic.
Well, the stickers are going to be, we're updating the stickers. We had said, I don't know if you heard that part.
Yep, in July.
Yeah, but
Anne
people
Marie
have
is going to
do that,
implement a
right?
taser,
Yeah.
It's still a job,
tase
right?
people.
Yeah.
We actually shamed people about the recycling last year.
Yeah.
And
It helps. It helps
some
out.
people had some strong feelings about that.
Oh, yeah, very strong.
They wanted to be able to put mufflers in their recycling bin and not be shamed for costing other township residents a
We weren't
substantial amount of
shaming,
money.
we were informing,
Oh, we were
We were educating.
shaming. Oh, we were educating, okay, my bad.
educating and informing.
Right. Yep. I also want to live consequence-free as well.
So I-
Unfortunately, that's not how the world works.
That was cool, that was good information.
Yeah, thank you.
Great. Great not board meeting.
Great, not board meeting.
Yes. Great discussion.
Great,
Best informal meeting televised I've ever been to.
great information session.
Casino over here.
So I think,
You should be at all of our not-board meetings.
Can you ban it in town? Like,
can you
No.
what?
no? Like the businesses don't serve stuff in styrofoam, you cannot do
I
that?
know you can't do plastic bags, but
We can't even get people to have to pay to cut down a tree. There's no way we could ban bags. You know, if you follow that tree case at the Supreme, in the case, no. Local governments don't have much, I mean, I'm not an expert, I could let them speak about it, but, yeah.
Are there any
No.
bannings of styrofoam?
It's a balance. What do you want, I mean, you want your convenience, or you want to, I mean, it's a value equation, what you want to be able to do.
Well, there's styrofoam, but there's also biodegradable take out things, containers also.
Yeah, I mean, I know there's ordinances across the country, cities do it all over the place, how they go about it, how they enforce it. I'd have to look into that.
Well,
We definitely-
Michigan passed a statewide ban
On banning.
on
Oh,
bans.
that's right, they did.
So
Well,
local,
but it
local
was for
governments,
Plastic bags, I don't know if it was for styrofoam too,
I thought it was for anything.
for anything. I know it
I
was for
think
plastic bags.
It's because like even the straw stuff, because like there's attempts at banning straws, there's attempts at, yeah.
Right.
Michigan local, I think they took that, and we're not a home rule community. You know, we only have, because we're a charter township, I think we only have the powers necessarily applied to us through the Charter Township Act, which, that makes it even harder for us. It's easier for a city. Chalk that one up in the score column for why you should become a city. If you want to ban plastic bags, it might be easier,
But I don't think
but probably still
Ann
not.
Arbor can't, because they did, and then they passed the.
Yeah, they had to
Yeah.
rescind it.
Yeah,
Yeah, and now they can't.
Yep.
trying to say.
Yeah, there's been an interesting move in the last couple of decades against local control. It happens every 50 years or so.
Yeah.
You know, they want to get rid of local control, then they go, and then it becomes hot all of a sudden, everyone's all about it. Yeah, the 1880s was a big time when the local control got completely repealed. And then it came back and about 30 years later in the 1910s, where the Home Rule Act came out. I think it was 1916. So it's exciting stuff if you follow local government stuff. But right now, we are in the era of like no local control. State is like, nope. You don't get to decide how, you know, trees or bags or styrofoam.
Yes, it looks like they did ban and they repealed the ban on plastic bags even in Lansing, saying nobody could do that anymore.
Right.
Just plastic bags?
It says,
I remember plastic bags, but they could have done other ones too.
Because I think there's other issues, like when they passed the regulation that, well, there's a couple of issues. One,
or any containers.
but if you can't regulate stuff if you didn't regulate it, you know, there's another blanket regulation ban out there that, you know, you can't regulate stuff if you didn't regulate it prior to the ban, which is another issue why we have a hard time with like hotels and things like that, because we didn't regulate hotels prior to the ban, so we can't, you know, regulate them. Michigan, there's all these weird little intricacies. But suffice to say, if it can make somebody money, at some point, somebody got a legislator in Lansing to stop us from interfering with that. And, you know, styrofoam makes people money.
So a lot of it is educating the businesses and trying to get them to
Like
change.
Aldi's, you have to buy a plastic bag
Right.
if you don't bring
Yeah.
your own bag.
Right.
Target, if you bring your own bag, you get 5 cents off.
There you
There
go.
you go.
So that's
We
the
could
stuff
do
I'm saying.
that.
Starbucks, you bring your own cup. So give incentives so people bring your own cup.
Right.
When we used to go to 7-Eleven, my kids want Slurpee. I said, you go and ask, you take your own cup and tell them to. I said, I'm not doing that. I said, well, then you're not getting Slurpee. So they went. But then COVID came, right? So then they would, but if you go with your own cup, take your own reusable straw, don't get. So there has to be some kind of education and incentive for people to do that
Yeah.
if we can't ban.
Right.
We could buy a bunch of canvas bags in township. Put them in, you know, we could buy a bunch of canvas bags and stuff in township and just put them in and see if the grocers will keep them. Hi, George.
Oh, at the meetings?
Yep.
Oh, sorry, I'm sorry.
There's no meeting.
Okay, that's okay. Anyone else have any other questions or anything? All right,
Thank
great.
you.
Yeah, thank you, everybody.
Stuart has his hand up.
Oh, Stuart? Okay, go ahead, Stuart.
Well, so one thing I did want to ask about is, now in terms of the food composting, I do understand that you have had many discussions on where the food waste could go, how the food waste could be collected. We talked about Midtown Composting, learning from the Ferndale program. I would just like to know, because I did submit a presentation, I'm not sure, on the food waste composting topic, not sure if you would remember. I would just like to know what citizens of Canton and Plymouth Township can do to help this process along. Is there any sort of a community action we could take? Is there any research we could do to help the township board? Is there anything we could do to help this process along while you go through your own internal deliberations and internal processes?
I mean, we had talked about how we're going to look at it in terms of, discuss with the board and see what direction they want to take and cost it out. That's just basically, I think that's where we are right now.
Yeah.
We've gotten a lot of examples and ways to go.
Yeah, and I think the thing that we're working on currently is also putting together that education piece. So regardless of what we do as a township, we can still put the education piece out there and start to filter that out to the community. So, and encourage recycling, correct recycling, composting. So I think as we move through that process, we can do that. So if there's additional information that someone has that they want to submit to us, then please, by all means, send it to us, and we can take it into consideration.
Okay, great. All right.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.